Now we'll take a quick look at some graphing exponential growth and decay functions. Now, as always, at this point in the year, we're really just kind of making sure we can identify the graph with a given equation. However, if you were to graph these with by hand, a t-chart is our normal mode of operation. Now keep in mind here that the a value in this particular function is actually 1. So 2 is the base, and you can just do a simple t-chart to come up with a given graph, and we know that the x-axis y equals to 0 is an asymptote. So a couple things here. You would definitely want to use numbers that would, integer values that would probably make it easier to graph this. As you get going positive and negative, that'll make graphing these a lot easier. Every now and then you'll end up with a fractional point, but it shouldn't be too bad from time to time. And since you know the basic shape determined by the asymptote, plotting a y-intercept and one additional point may be all that's necessary. So if you go ahead and take a look at the next sample problem here, go ahead and graph these two sample problems and come back and take a look at the solution. Alright, so for this first one, I'm just going to graph a couple t-chart points just to have a generic idea of what this looks like. And the first thing I really want to know is when x is 0, what my y-intercept is. And if you keep in mind, anything to the 0 power is just 1. So that makes 2/3 right there my y-intercept. So 0, 2/3, and of course you just graph that as best you can. And then I'll do one more and try to come up with a decent point. So I'll do 2. So if I do 2 to the 2nd power, I get 4. 4 times 2 gives me 8. So that gives me a point of 8/3. And 8/3 is a little bit more than 2. So I'm going to say 2 and 8/3 is about right there. And that's plenty good enough. And because I know that this is going to be an exponential growth function due to that 2, so I know that that's growth, I know that I'm going to have an asymptote here, and then it's going to build up from there. And so that's a pretty good representation of this particular graph. If I look at sample problem 2, I now know that I'm dealing with decay because it's a fraction. And then if you recall from the last problem, that a value was actually our y-intercept. So that makes this process of graphing a point much easier. So now that I've done that, I'll actually just kind of do one more point here. I've done the 0, which I know gives me 4. I'll just do a positive 1. If I did a positive 1, that's actually going to lead you to 8/5. Not quite 2, but a little more than 1. And we know that this is coming from up here, and it's decay, and then it's going to follow the intercept. So that's a pretty good sketch of that function. So that's a good representation of two graphing ones. You can always check these on your calculator, and you'll want to get a good idea of what these functions are going to look like based off the equation.